Welcome back. I'm Krista from Plant Lux, and today I thought I would reveal my secrets to these amazing beauties known as Monstera Adansonii. This plant is also called Monkey's Mask and Adanson's Monster, and also the Swiss cheese plant. I don't know, common names that this plant goes by. So let's get started. We want to talk about what are the different kinds of Monstera Adansonii, because, even though the care might just slightly vary, it is good to know the differences. That way when you go out to look for the plant, you get the plant or the version or the variety of the Adansonii that you prefer. Now, in my experience, I found that the narrow form, which is this guy right here, care of this plant is easier. Now, that might well be due to the fact that this particular plant is an established plant, and sometimes, as you know, established plants are just easier to take care of than, their smaller cousins. Okay, so if you look here, you can kind of see that this plant has really taken off. So this is, again, the narrow form. Okay, if you could look at the leaf shape. Okay, so this is a brand new leaf, and the holes are smaller, and the shape of the leaf is elongated. Okay, so narrow form Adansonii. Take a look at this more mature leaf right here, and you can see there are many fenestrations or holes. These are called holes or fenestrations. And notice how many there are on a more mature leaf. Okay, over here, if you could really get a good view of this guy. This right here is a wide form Adansonii. Now, wide form tends to have a more heart-shaped leaf appearance, and it's also known as the round form. So it's quite a bit wider, and it just looks a little different as far as like width. Okay, so you can see that this particular plant, I also have it staked up on a pole, but this is the wide form, and the other one was the narrow form. Now this is also a narrow form, a more immature plant. It's in its infancy. Some of the leaves don't even have holes in them. With time, though, this one will. So this is a vining, climbing, trailing plant that can be found in South or Central America. It can be found trailing along riverbanks or trailing up trees or climbing trees in the jungle. So this plant, obviously in the jungle, the lighting situation is usually a little bit limited for this plant, which is the reason why it has holes in it, because it was the plant's survival mechanism in order to be able to get more light across the surface of a leaf. So the holes makes it kind of a really cool, interesting looking, sleek, elegant plant that a lot of plant enthusiasts love about it. So the next thing I'd like to talk about are the soil requirements for this plant. Now, with the soil, you want to make sure that you have a well-draining soil. The best soil for this particular plant is a peat-based soil, especially if you have a large pot. The soil requirements, I would say for my personal, my personal experience, I use the Miracle-Gro potting mix. I don't mix any different sort of soils in there. Now, some of you may have other experiences in that, but that's how I have done it. So in this pot, for example, over here, if you can kind of see, it is about a 16-inch off the ground pot, and I filled the bottom, I would say, probably 8 inches with Miracle-Gro potting mix, and then I placed my plant inside of that, and it's been doing fantastic. So that's from my experience, I would say in the last probably about 6 months or so. Now in 6 months time, I just want to give you sort of a growth meter. I've basically had it in the same spot. It's pulled back about 10 feet from the window, and it began right about here. So when I first potted it, the vine only went right about up to the midway section of this particular pole. And since then, it's grown pretty tall, as you can see. Now, if you're considering putting yours on a stake after you've potted it, I've seen people go back down to make for a full plant. Instead of cutting off the top propagations, they just wind it down and up and down and up. So that's what I'm doing with this plant right here. That way I get a really full, beautiful look. So, and that's pretty much what's going on over here also. This one though has grown so much that I am having a hard time finding places on the pole to put it. Okay, so back to what I was saying about soil. I use Miracle Grow potting mix. You can use whatever soil mixture you prefer, as long as it's like a peat-based soil. Okay, let's talk about the next thing, lighting. Because this is an understory jungle plant that tends to climb up trees, the lighting situation then deems it to be one where there's indirect sunlight. If you have a south-facing window, make sure that you pull it back. I would say a good 4 feet or more, because if you put it in direct sunlight, the plant tends to grow slower. It's not happy. It prefers to be pulled back away from the window a little bit. I, again, have mine pulled back about 10 to 12 feet, yeah. Now, as far as this plant goes, this plant is pulled back, I would say 4 feet from a southeast facing window. What else? So as far as lighting requirements are concerned, it is happiest when it is near sunlight, some indirect filtered sunlight. One really important factor when you're trying to grow a very giant Monstera Adansonii is humidity. They love humidity. They are best when they have 90% humidity. Now granted, 90% humidity would be something that you would find in a terrarium or perhaps a greenhouse. So 90% humidity might not be ideal for your home. So you might want to find that if you want the best, most prolific grower, you're going to want to mist your plant regularly to keep it at that 90% humidity. You could also have a tray with some pebbles in it and some water in it underneath the plant as well to keep humidity levels up, or you could have it near a humidifier. I have mine, this one right here, near a humidifier. That is one of the reasons why this thing is shooting out so much growth that I have propagated it probably 3 times at least. And it just continues to grow extremely fast. So I know that humidity is part of that. So keep that in mind. That's one of my secrets, and a lot of nursery secrets. They keep their humidity at 90%. Now granted, it would be hard to do in your home, like I said. So spray the leaves or keep it near a humidifier. Okay, another really important factor to consider when growing very large Adansonii is fertilization. Fertilization is very important because it is shooting out so much growth. And when a plant is continuing to shoot out a lot of growth, you're going to want to keep the plant on a continuous fertilization regimen. So for me, what I do is I use Jacks, and I fertilize every time I water. Per 1 gallon water, it's a 1/4 teaspoon. I have a 2-gallon watering container, so I use a 1/2 teaspoon. And that is what I do every single time I water my Monstera Adansonii. That's not to say that organic fertilizers aren't good. I'm sure they're fantastic. I just do what works for me, and my results, I think, speak for themselves, at least in my household, and the humidity levels that I have in here, as well as the watering schedule that I have it on. So that brings me to the next thing, watering. For me, watering occurs when, okay, let me back up a little. Watering for this guy down here, you see that this is a much larger pot, so it doesn't have to occur as frequently. So I'll check this plant by sticking my finger in the soil, and I let it get dry for about, I would say, 2 to 3 inches before I water it. Another indicator is to look at the leaves. If the leaves look droopy or like they're turning a different color, like a lighter green, that's a sign that you need to water your plant immediately. On this one over here, if I miss waterings, I notice that the leaves will turn yellow and die and fall off. So it is something to take into consideration when you have larger plants like this, that they're going to use a lot more water because they're kicking out a lot of growth. So something to keep in mind. If you have a smaller plant like this one, This one's in a grow pot, so it's not actually in a terracotta pot. That's another thing that really, I think, depends on the watering. If you have a terracotta pot, you're going to find that you're watering your plants a lot more frequently. I think the reason is that the pot pulls the moisture away from the plant. It's just what the pot does. I don't have mine potted in a terracotta pot, any of these, for that reason, because I would be afraid the soil would get too dry and then it would end up harming the plant. So food for thought, if you have a lot of plants like I do, or if you miss waterings, you don't want to pot in a terracotta pot. You want to keep it in a nursery pot or a plastic pot. So this is a propagation from this mother plant right here. This is a wide form or a round form Monstera. And this propagation is fairly new, and you can see there's a lot of growth on it. Okay, a lot of new babies. It's doing very well. There's a lot of growth points. This propagation, I would say, is probably about maybe 5 weeks old, and it's doing very well. Now, how I did this propagation was in water. So let's talk about propagation now, okay? This is also another propagation of mine. This is a newer propagation. It's about maybe 3 weeks old. So we're still waiting for some babies to come in. This is how I do my propagations. I haven't had any luck with soil propagating with this particular variety. Why? I'm not really sure, but I have tried propagating in soil and it just hasn't worked for me. So I decided to switch solely to water, and it's worked several times. So this is what it looks like when you propagate. This is a narrow form. I took a lot of mature leaves. Actually, I can't get it out. I don't want to hurt the roots. There we go. So this is ready to be potted, and we'll do that today. I'll show you how I do it. It already has new growth in several places, which is a really, really good sign. And honestly, you'll find that when you're propagating more mature plants, your propagations are going to be fantastic, and they'll root really quickly, and they'll shoot out new growth very, very quickly. So my advice to you is, if you want a giant Adansonii, is to start with a giant, or get propagations from a giant, and then it'll grow into another giant. It just seems to be the way it works for me. So before we go ahead and pot up the propagation that I was showing you, what I'd like to do is show you how to propagate. So if you take a section, I think I'm gonna go ahead and go for this one right here. You're gonna wanna find a node. So this is a node, okay, and those are aerial roots. And this is a node right here, okay, and that's a small aerial root. Every time you cut, you will get what we call adventitious growth. I want to find some growth points. This is a big long one, so I'm going to propagate this one coming right off the top. And I'm actually going to cut about down here. Okay, so you can see that this has already been propagated. This is adventitious growth right here. This is all adventitious growth from a previous time that I propagated. So this is just proof that when you propagate, you're going to get a lot of growth on your plant. And that is one of the biggest things that I think new plant parents forget, is if you're propagating and pruning your plant, it actually leads your plant to force out or push out more growth very quickly. And it's a really great way to get your plant to get your plant to grow pretty fast and make more plants. Yay. Go ahead and take this one. Now, some people say like this won't survive, this new growth, but in my experience, they do survive on my propagations. Would I cut it? I could cut it down here where there's these aerial roots, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm probably gonna cut it down here because I want my new propagation and the new plant that I pot up when I am ready to pot these. I want it to be a long trailing binding already. I want it to be looking like an established plant. So that's what I'm going for with this propagation. So for these ones, I just took them individually, and see, this is a new growth point here. This is the area root that's rooted out. But what I did was I cut the vine. Okay, this one's got some root growth. and it's already got a new growth point right there. You can see that. Okay. Anyway, my point is that I want, when I create my new propagation, or my new plant, my goal for this next propagation is to have the long leggy look. So I don't have to cut, you know, at every node. I can leave them like this if I want to. Okay. So this is another example of a propagation that I took about 4 weeks ago, and you can see how this looks. Lots of growth points. It is not older than, I would say, 4 weeks old. So it's doing very, very well. And before too long, it'll be having some legs. But again, these were mature cuttings. You can see how large these leaves are. They're almost the size of my hand. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're propagating, that, you know, if you start with mature propagation, you'll end up with, you know, pretty quick growth and a pretty mature looking plant to start with. I would get a nursery pot like this, and I would place about 3 inches or 4 inches in the bottom of the pot of soil. Then I would dampen the soil so it's easier to work with. So basically you want the soil moist because it's going to make it easier to control where you're placing these. So sometimes some people even cut them a little lower. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave them just like that because I find that it's easier. So you just place them in wherever you want them. You're going to want about 10 to 15, maybe even 15 to 20 of these things to get a really full head of hair, which is, I think, what you'd be wanting to go for. And I don't know if you can kind of see what I'm doing if you want to pan in here. But I'm sticking them in, and I left all this space because I'm going to throw the soil right on top when I'm done. So the roots will be covered up. But you don't want to harm the roots because you spent all that time growing them. And if you find that some of the stems that you did are just too long, just go ahead and clip them. It's not going to hurt anything. And then stick them in where you want them. You know, it's kind of like floral arranging at this point. You know, you're gonna find that you're just placing them wherever you think it looks good. Just be very gentle when you're placing them though, because if there are new growth points like these ones, you know, you don't want to crush the new growth point. If you wanted to start by staking it up, let's say, for example, you don't want a hanging basket, and what you want is, oh, this one has a little bit of rot. Not all your propagations might work. So this one has a little bit of rot. I'm just going to scrape it away, and then we'll see what happens. We're going to have to keep our eye on this one though. I'm going to cut this at the end though, because you see the rot. There is a start of an aerial root, but you don't want rot in the pot, so you're going to want to cut any place where you see that. That looks pretty good. I don't really think the other part of this is going to be that problematic. We'll see what happens. I'm going to keep my eye on this one. I think that's it. All right, then the last thing that I would do is I would top dress the soil. And you know, you've got your little babies down here, so you're gonna wanna be really careful, and you're gonna wanna loosely spread the soil around, and I don't touch it, okay? I give it a little breathing room. And after you're done potting your propagation, you're going to wanna make sure that you keep the soil a little bit moist, because remember, the environment that you had them growing in was in water, at least in this particular situation. So you're gonna wanna keep the soil a little bit moist at times, and kind of wean them off that constant water that they were used to. That's it. That's it. We just potted a propagation, but now I want to talk about potting your Monstera. A lot of botanists and very successful nurseries suggest to repot every year. These plants do not like to be root bound. You'll get more growth when you pot up. Now, don't pot up extravagantly large, but I would say pot up one size. So if you're in an 8-inch pot, pot up to 10 inches. If you're in a situation like this, I could tell this plant desperately needs to be repotted. So I'm going to be working on that as well to pot this up. They say though, don't wait longer than 2 years. You should be potting up your Monstera once a year, but no, don't wait any longer than 2 years. And that'll give you the best result with this particular plant and keep it healthy and happy. And that's what we want. We want healthy and happy plants. When you have just freshly potted this plant, like so, the roots are very vulnerable. So you're going to want to back off on the fertilization at least maybe for a couple weeks or maybe a month while the roots establish themselves. So just be careful because you might get some damage to the leaves or to the roots if you fertilize a plant that has weak roots or a plant that has been recently up potted or repotted. I'm gonna repot this guy. It's in desperate need of it. We're gonna pot up almost 2 pot sizes. Generally, I would just recommend going up 1 pot size, but I'm gonna go up 2 pot sizes. Now, some of you might have some concerns about root rot. I'm not concerned about that though, because I know that this guy is really root bound and he should have been repotted a long time ago. My bad. Okay, so let's get to it. You're gonna be really gentle. You're gonna wanna lay it down on the side. I don't even think I would lay this one down because you're gonna end up breaking leaves if you do it. So put some pressure on the root base with your palm. Press down as much as you can. And if you're doing this as a solo operation like I'm doing it, you might want to have someone hold it while you pull the stem out of the pot. Now I'm going to see if I can do it by myself first. Yeah, it's not going to come out very easily. This guy's been in here for quite a while. All right, so this is what we're looking at right here. If you see what we're doing, we've got about this much space. Now we're just gonna wanna pour the soil in around the root ball. You just wanna go get it down in there. Okay? It's a very easy process. And then I'm just gonna get some more soil. And we're going to finish this job up pretty quickly. You need to put that up before I start. I'm having a little bit of an issue with the vines coming off of the pole. So what I would recommend doing is, this is not very sightly, but I would take some floral tape because it's very gentle on the stems and some scissors, and I would just tie it up until you find something that looks a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. So now that that's out of the way and I don't have to worry about that anymore, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here with the soil and I'm just going to go ahead and fill in the root base. You could go scoopful by scoopful, handful by handful if you wanted to. Again, the object is just try to be as gentle as you possibly can with this plant. careful with that. Give it a good soak. I'm just going to do that for a preliminary soak just to make sure that the soil gets a little bit more firm. I don't want to soak it all the way through yet because what I still want to do is I still want to hose it off a little bit while I'm out here. And the reason I want to hose it off is number one, insect prevention, and number two, I'm going to go ahead and treat it with neem oil, and I want a good fresh wash before I do that. I'm going to do my neem oil prevention treatment because, you know, this stuff is kind of messy inside the house, and while I'm out here, I just figured might as well, because this would be part of my normal care routine anyway, so let's treat it. Okay, so I feel pretty satisfied with the amount of neem oil that I've put on it. I guess my last piece of advice, when using neem oil, you have to make sure that it's overcast, it's not hot out. You also have to make sure that the temperatures are conducive to it. It's about 70s right now. It's very cloudy, there's no blazing sun. Blazing sun plus neem oil equals burnt leaves, so you don't want to scorch your leaves, so make sure that you don't have blazing sun. Three things to never ever do when you have a Monstera Adansonii. The first thing, don't put off repotting. Putting off repotting is bad for the plant. It's not going to lead to the healthiest, happiest plant. Do not put off repotting. The second thing, pets. If you have pets, you have to keep these plants away from pets. These are considered moderately toxic to pets. So if you have a pet that likes to chew plants, you're going to want to have this in a hanging basket and keep it up, or if you have a floor plant, keep it away from your pets. Overwatering. Overwatering or underwatering will kill your plant. You will find out very quickly because leaves will start to turn yellow and fall off pretty quickly. You can tell when this plant is unhappy. In fact, confessions from me, this actually is the first plant that I killed, and yeah, I overwatered it. So just kind of beware that it's very easy to do that, because you know you're aiming to feed your plant and make it happy, but really what you end up doing is killing it. The last thing is keep it in indirect sunlight. If you put this plant in direct sunlight, don't do it. Don't ever do it. It will kill your plant. Okay, your plant will be very, very unhappy, and it won't look pretty. Okay, and it won't be happy or healthy. So just kind of note to self, those are things you don't want to do. Don't ever do them. Okay. I think that about wraps it up here today. Okay, that's it. So thank you for joining me today in this Monstera Adansonii, my secrets, my tips and tricks, and some of the common mistakes that new plant owners might make, or even seasoned plant owners may make. Please hit that thumbs up if you like this video. I'm here for you every Monday and Thursday, and I hope that you come back and see me again soon. And if you're new to my channel, please hit that subscribe button. It really does help. I was looking at the analytics, and it's 75% of the people that watch me aren't subscribed, so please, please, please subscribe. It's free. Yeah, okay. And I am here for you with all the plant care tips that you might need. So if you have any questions, or even if it's not about this plant or a video that you'd like to see in the future, please leave it in the comments in the description, or excuse me, in the comment section below. And that's it. I hope you guys are having a great day, and enjoy your day, and reach out and say hi to me, okay? All right, guys, thanks a lot for joining me. Bye.